Melissa, and I am the marketing director for Rejuve.AI, and I am here with Ben Meyers from LongeviQuest and Jasmine, the CEO of Rejuve, and we're just gonna have a little hangout chat today. So thanks for joining, guys.
Thank you.
I'm really excited to get to do this as we have become, I'm going to call us friends. I feel like we can be
I
friends
agree.
now. We met in Dublin at the Longevity Summit there back earlier this summer, and I feel like the three of us just meshed really well. And I think that our businesses in themselves have a lot of synchronicity. What word is that I was just trying to say? A lot of common denominators. And so I think it'll be really fun to have a little chat about it today, kind of go through what each of us do, and then basically explore the longevity field in and of itself, what our different thoughts are and things like that moving forward. So, Ben, you want to go first and give a little intro about yourself?
Sure. Well, I agree with your history of our relationship here, starting in Dublin and then Miami, so two fun places. I am the CEO and founder of LongeviQuest, which is basically our first mission is to identify and determine and record the oldest people who already live. And so a lot of folks in the longevity field are about how do we extend the lifespan, and we want to start with the control group right now, the folks who are already winning the longevity Olympics. And believe it or not, it's something that very few people have put resources to in the past. It's been the domain of volunteer organizations, and you had folks in the US and Europe and Latin America and Japan, and we kind of want to take that and maximize it. And we've been doing a great job. Our researchers have been doing a great job, I should say, at expanding that knowledge of how long people can live right now, and giving a lot of inspiration to folks, and hopefully good information to people like you who are trying to extend that lifespan.
Yes. I'm excited to dive more into exactly how they go about doing that and everything in the future with that as well. So we'll wait and we'll pause for it. Jasmine, give me a little intro for yourself.
Hi. Yes. Yeah. As you guys mentioned, it's been really great, kind of connecting and synergizing, our two entities, given in this kind of new emergent field of longevity, even though it's not quite a new field. But anyways, my name is Jasmine. As mentioned, I'm the CEO of Rejuve.AI, and I have been well, in this particular entity for about 2.5 years, but I became part of this overall ecosystem of beneficial artificial general intelligence for about 5 years now. Um, and yeah, so we're basically we're building an initiative to be able to help people to live longer, extend their health and lifespans via the power of AI and blockchain.
I love it. I mean, I can say that because I work here, but I think that this take on longevity is in two very different aspects. From Ben trying to capture things that are already in existence, and for Jasmine and Rejuve essentially trying to go where AI is going to take us in the future. So, with that, I want to know the background. Ben, how did you decide to get into this? I know that this is not. You've also come from like a different background previously. So, what started this for you?
It was personal interest more than anything. I think that there's obviously a scientific component to these folks who live a very long time, longer than anybody else, but they've also lived through a ton of history and had a ton of personal experiences that are very interesting. So it actually goes back about almost 20 years, trying to find information. And right now, until LongeviQuest came around 2 years ago, there was a lack of organization and lack of synthesis, so to say. And I noticed that back then, and he actually did what I think a lot of people did in the 2000s and started an internet forum for that information. And about 15 years later, that forum was still the main place where these researchers were getting together to discuss things. And I wasn't, I still am a commercial insurance broker, and kind of developed the ability to invest in the field. And LongeviQuest emerged from that. And luckily, there are many great people who did this for a long time before it was a business, and so we were able to get a lot of very experienced folks to do a lot of really great research.
Interesting. So with LongeviQuest, you guys have been working closely with kind of creating this database by how so? What are you doing to do that?
Well, it first starts with what's called the validation process, and there are reasons why somebody might not exactly be the age that they're rumored to be. And yes, it'd be fun to suddenly be the oldest person in the world, but It could also be when somebody lived in the 1960s in the US and they wanted Social Security, and they might be just 3 years too young, but they had a sister who was 3 years older, and it'd be really nice to be 3 years older right now. And there's a lot of different reasons why it might not be accurate, and some of it's totally innocent. And so, really, a lot of what our folks do involves documentation and more investigative journalism, so to say, than science, because it goes in and checking to make sure that throughout somebody's life, their age has been consistent. So we know for sure who the candidates are. It's not like you can go right now and carbon date people. And so we rely on documentation, and that's one reason why some areas of the world have been less covered than others. And we're trying to alleviate those areas because obviously people live a long time all over the world.
Interesting. What would you say the places are that you find, I guess, most common so far, or where you have the plethora of data from so far?
Japan is really the number one for two reasons. I would say one, there's a high life expectancy there in Japan, and two, there's also a lot of really great record keeping there for the past at least 100 years, 150 years, and so there's a lot of people who are living to that age, and they are all provable to live to that age. So Japan looms large in all of these conversations, I would say.
Great. Love it. All right, Jasmine, tell me how you got started in the longevity field. I know we briefly mentioned that you come from the Singularity Net ecosystem, or maybe we didn't mention that, but you kind of mentioned the ecosystem. So how did you get started with Rejuve on your side?
Yeah. So I guess the actual my interest in longevity, kind of does kind of go back to my childhood, actually. Yeah, I was like one of those people that was a bit researching into cryopreservation, and then as I got older, it became a lot of like supplements and natural health and like ways to kind of biohack. So my actual career field was more just in health information management, so it's synergistic with data handling and management. And then, yeah, as mentioned, I got involved with an ecosystem called Singularity Net, who is kind of pioneering this idea of making sure that artificial general intelligence and AI as a whole is kind of steering in a direction that is friendly toward us and kind of avoiding Terminator scenarios and things like that. So I always thought that was really cool, and I got involved in that in a volunteer kind of way and got to know them. And at a certain point, I got brought onto the team officially, first as the product manager for the Rejuve spinoff project, and then CEO.
I love it. I think that, I mean, we're all hoping for a non-Terminator scenario when it comes to AI. So knock on wood, let's hope that it progresses the same way. Can you dive a little bit more into how Rejuve uses AI in the company's overall drive for the future?
Yeah, so the AI is quite central because, for one, it's a way to process these large volumes of latent data that people will be contributing or that we can, abstract through our protocols. To be able to process it and kind of discover new patterns and things that, it would take scientists and researchers, many times over, 20, 30, 50, 100 years to get through. We can process that in a fraction of the time now. And then we can also kind of create more personalized, tailored solutions for individuals that wasn't necessarily possible in the past without, again, having a close personal, doctor or something that's like sort of following your whole life. Now we can sort of accelerate that process with the AI being able to analyze data in real time and feedback from your actual current live experiences and be able to steer in the right direction. So yeah, personalized medicine pretty much.
Yeah, so basically, we're going to be able to use that to become the super centenarians that Ben is researching right now. So they kind of can go hand in hand together.
For
Love
sure.
it. So I have a couple of questions, kind of more on your philosophy and vision of and individual dreams of like how you feel longevity should go in the field. So this is meant to be more of like a conversation, not necessarily like a Q&A. So you both can, kind of go back and forth with how we do this. But I wanted to know how you guys individually see the future of longevity and the field of it in terms of like, what do you want it to be? What's the best case scenario for us? And then how does each of your companies respectively like fit into that goal in the future? Say 5, 10, 20 years down the road.
You cut out a tiny bit at the end there, Melissa, with the question. I heard 5'10", and then you cut out for 1 second. Sorry, what was that?
I know. 20 years down the road, how do you see your organization and the field of longevity in and of itself? How does it play an impact in there?
You want to go first, Jasmine, or should I jump in there?
Um, I'm happy to go first. So yeah, I see this kind of idea of longevity. It's kind of, you can look at it from two major points. One, it's getting to live, to these kind of known limits, 110, 120 years old, and I guess optimally to be in a condition that resembles a younger self, that you're not kind of crippled over and like looking the way that you don't want to look anymore and all that kind of stuff, that we're able to actually preserve that youth into the old age. I think that's like kind of that way. But then there's another side of it, as the idea of actually extending the human lifespan beyond that age range that we know of, because it's pretty much not moved, since the history of forever, since that we can track back. So I think that if we were to kind of go beyond that, that would be something that is a paradigm shift for like reality, rather than only, just talking about everyday health and wellness. And so I think that the idea behind, all of what it seems the industry is coalescing on is that let's get everybody to those ages, and still with our same, capabilities in mind, and uh, kind of robustness and everything, to be able to further push those limits, and see if that really is something that's possible.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point, because we actually just published a blog post about like centenarians in, ancient times. And some of the research has come back and said that, our lifespan honestly has not extended much from ancient civilizations. It's about the same, which is crazy to me, because you would think with technology that it would have by now. So I'm interested to see how this field and new research coming out actually could potentially extend that. Ben, what are your thoughts?
I agree, and I think that the what Jasmine was describing is a lot about health span, and I think that that really is an equal component to lifespan. And with super centenarians, when we look at somebody who reaches the age of 115, maybe at that point they've slowed down a little bit, maybe not, but pretty much anybody who reaches the age of at least 110, when they were 90, they were living a very independent, active life, and they were doing things, exercise and social and family, etc. And I think one problem that the longevity industry might have is a bit of a demand problem, where I think you have a lot of folks maybe around our age who would say, well, well, do you want to live that long? Nah, I don't want to live that long. Just kill me when I'm 65. I mean, I hear that kind of thing a lot. And I think it's
I know
because
what you mean.
there is a perception that when somebody gets to that age, they are sickly. And, if I could choose one thing in particular, you will not find a super centenarian. I don't want to say never, but I'm not aware of any who dies of cancer. That just doesn't happen. And they have a lot of folks who smoke, and sometimes in the past there's been so little evidence that it's become anecdotal, where okay, you could smoke and not get cancer because look what happened to her. That's not really that true. That's why we're glad to have some more data that then AI, et cetera, can analyze. But really, it's a matter of these folks have lived very healthy lifestyles. And when I look at longevity, and one thing I love about what you guys are doing at Rejuve.AI is kind of making it a little more accessible for certain folks to avoid the pitfalls that take the average age down. And if there's somebody who's 40 years old and they don't have a doctor, and they're maybe there's signs of something that we would see very well here in the West, and kind of bringing that access and being able to almost have their medical records, stuff like that for everybody is really key. And I think that hopefully the people we study set an example for how there's actually desirable to live a long time. It's not just an unintended outcome that a lot of people, I think, nowadays want to avoid.
Yeah, I think we hear that all the time, where people are like, no, 65 is basically, actually, people mostly say after 30, it's kind of like all downhill. So this is really the peak time that,
I
all
haven't noticed.
that we all
Yeah.
want,
This is it.
that we all want to be. Yeah, this is it. We're in our prime right now.
Yeah.
And so I agree with that. I think that like extending the health span
Yeah.
of us, and not necessarily the age span, is really what we're going for, because we want, when we're 65, to feel like we're 30, and when you're 90 to feel like you're 60, and kind of being able to extend that longer, and not just getting old and sitting in a chair and not able to do anything, which I'm sure, Ben, you found as a trend is that's not very common most of the time, right?
That was super centenarians. And maybe again, once they reach that point, maybe. But if you go back to when they were 95, pretty much every single one was in really amazing shape. And then they get to so many amazing years in that then okay, a few years resting, maybe it's called for at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So next question, I'm going to give this to Jasmine first because I feel like it flies a little bit more. So how do you feel like AI and data analytics is going to transform how we understand aging and longevity moving forward?
Yeah, so I think we'll be able to get to a lot more kind of precise kind of combinations of data and information and be able to kind of simulate population studies in a way that maybe wasn't possible in the past, and then kind of break that down even further into your individual self. And that's kind of a lot of what we're kind of building toward in Rejuve.AI, is being able to create these live kind of reactive simulations of individual bodies in real time to be able to kind of simulate, okay, what would happen if you adjusted and adapted this protocol, and we can kind of estimate the effects to some degree of certainty to be able to steer that. So I think that'll be the kind of the most exciting or like noticeably prominent area that things will change, and it'll be able to kind of quicker highlight some of these things that we already kind of know are impacting the global longevity, but being able to actually produce the necessary kind of like scientific rigor that's needed to actually put it on a public space and get it into these levels of government and popular opinion and all this kind of thing. And then beyond that, of course, there's the kind of drug development side of things, being able to do a lot of things with actual molecules and chemistry to be able to arrive at new molecules and combination of substances that can kind of interfere and stop disease earlier in its tracks, or even reduce some of the processes if you catch it early enough. So that'll be a big one as well.
Yeah, I agree, and I think what you guys are doing is extraordinary. With kind of making it possible to have these large cohort studies in a way over time, and tracking folks in a way that obviously they're submitting their data and getting stuff in exchange. But I think with AI, as far as my niche of the field is exciting about is it has been largely anecdotal in the past. 2 years ago, before OQ was public, we were doing our things publicly. There were 9 living supercentenarians that were known on the quote unquote official list. And now there's about 200, and that's just living right now. So when we look historically, maybe people knew about 2,000, and now we're going to know about 20,000. And there's no reason for data to be anecdotal where the oldest person smokes and it's okay to smoke. When you take the increased data and data quality and mix it with AI and the analysis that you guys have, I think there's really a chance for a lot of acceleration. And I remember when you were presenting in Dublin, and I turned to my colleagues who were there, I said, with maybe some embellishment, like she's a genius, because it was just very clear that allowing that many folks to put their data up is a good thing for everybody. And I love that you're targeting it globally. And you were in Dublin, I know, but also some places that are not, in the Western world promoting that. And that's really key. There should not be these massive, gaps of data in a lot of the world, and really in parts of the world where the population is growing, in some ways the global south.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I also think that Jasmine's a genius when she speaks on stage. So, double win there. But I agree with you. I think that one of the special things, especially for me, has working with Rejuve is basically allowing more people to have access to the knowledge that they typically wouldn't have. I think that that's one of our common missions is democratizing longevity is really, I think, a key player in how AI and data and stuff and continues to advance the fields and give everybody more accessibility, because it's going to take less time and money to create new processes and drugs and learn more information, and be able to get that out to people quicker and faster and things like that. And lots of parts of the world, it's not necessarily just, hey, I want to live forever. Like, to be honest, I think we like to say like that's generally like a rich white man's type of way of thinking. Like a lot of people really don't have access to that, and they really want to just extend their health span and be able to live healthily and not necessarily have all access to all the treatments, the millions of dollars that they can spend on things, which I think is a really great opportunity for us to be able to pull that in and be able to be like, hey, no, look, you live in Africa, you live in Spain, you live in the US, we all can have access to figuring out how to live a healthier life and
Well, life expectancy is an
take
average.
advantage.
Yeah, and that's the thing, it's an
Yeah,
average.
exactly.
We're trying to have people pull up the average, but there are folks pulling it down. And when somebody dies of something undetected, at 35, that's a real tragedy. And that pulls that down. And what you guys I think are making it possible is you have somebody submitting their medical records, over the course of a couple of years, it might say, hey, this could be whatever. And hopefully it is preventative. And you have some of those unnecessary deaths, so to say, at a young age. That pulls life expectancy up, just as if we have a bunch of us starting to live to 110.
Yeah, and exactly, and being able to identify if there is like trends and patterns, and being able to extrapolate that and say, hey, look, there's a problem here. Not just in this little regional area, but maybe this is something that everyone needs to be aware of, because like the knowledge is power. As you mentioned, um, so just being able to actually impact these supply chains and the way that we even organize resource and everything like that can literally save millions of lives and extend lives. So.
For sure.
Agreed. So leading kind of into that, I mean, I don't know if we're technically allowed to talk about it, but how do you guys see Rejuve and LongeviQuest working together on like a general scope? Don't have to go into specific details.
I think there's a natural, synergy with what you guys are doing with AI, and I think that we are, one of, the people we study are to some extent one of those cohorts that folks look at, and as we look across the world, there's, whoever lives to 113, and we're talking about data and making sure it's not distorted. We didn't want to come in here and start validating folks and make it seem like suddenly there's a whole lot more super centenarians now than there were before. We're looking backwards too. We're trying to, make those trends accurate, but we take all the data that we're looking up, and it's really a lot more than has ever been collected about these folks who are already, when we say the control group, we mean the treatments you referenced, Melissa. None of these folks who are super centenarians are taking any of that stuff, and they're not taking supplements. They kind of did it almost accidentally, reaching that age. That they really are a very good control group, and there are some stuff that I think we keep more quiet, rather than telling the whole podcast now, but there are ways in which your guys' expertise, I think, could look at things with a very, and, Jasmine mentioned some of it earlier, can look at information about these folks and turn it into actionable advice, and maybe even more than that, more than advice for folks who are around the world who want to reach that age. And so I think when you take the fact there's more raw data than anybody's ever had on this topic, and combine it with the tools of analysis that you guys are building, and then also comparing it to the general population, so to say, there's really a lot of very clear avenues for cooperation, and I know I've been excited about it ever since we started talking about it.
Yeah, definitely. So I see, to add to that, so basically, in order to kind of discover what it really is that makes people live longer, since we know, like you're saying, it's not necessarily taking a bunch of supplements. I mean, we know some basic things like being active is definitely a big one, right? But if there are, we need kind of a larger body, of knowledge about this that is, accurate and validated, in order to really assess kind of ways to get more people to that level, and kind of discovering what really is it, and how can we influence that, or is there a way to influence that, and all those sorts of things. And so also when it comes to actually building this body of knowledge from such a sensitive group of people, we want to make sure that we have that, cultural and social sensitivity toward this realm of data collection, especially when it comes to people, who have been around, since the time before any of this technology actually came about. And being sensitive to their families and the actual lives of the individuals, and not just seeing them as data and numbers on a screen. So I think that's really
100%.
important and impactful too, that you guys really do well with.
100%.
Yeah, Ben, I mean, you haven't really dived into it a whole ton. Can you kind of talk about what you guys do in terms of how you get information from people? I know that there's a lot more into it than rather than just validating facts.
Sure. I mean,
How do you get to know them?
of course and I think Jasmine said it very well. There's, there are a whole lot more than just data points. And so, a lot of times we hear with their from their families and their caregivers, and oftentimes, especially in the United States, there's with family Bibles and things like that, the families are often a very important part of validating them. But our favorite part is going and meeting them, and going and chatting with them, and you find a lot of folks who are pretty surprised to still be around. And I guess that after all that time, that the sweet memories kind of cream rise to the top, the sweet memories rise to the top. You have a lot of folks who are willing to share a lot of very interesting things, and it's personally, it's been extremely exciting, and as a history buff, and also all of us in this, and I don't want to speak for you guys as well, but all of us in our group, we tend to have a very high proportion of people who were close to their grandparents. I was close with all my grandparents, then most of my great grandparents, and I had a great grandmother who was born in 1916, and a couple weeks ago in Japan, got my hair cut by a lady born that same year. She did a great job. I mean, just things like that end up being very fun and cool. And they, there certain folks. It's very rare for super centenarians to be famous earlier in life. Some of them are, but most of the time they tend to get their fame by virtue of their age mostly. And so you have folks who are going, and in a way, I think they're so much more relatable because somebody who's a celebrity their entire lives, and you're asking them, they live a lifestyle that's much different. Whereas these folks can give really, they've lived life, and they live very serious things have happened to them, and they really amazing sources of wisdom, way beyond just about the health arena, way beyond that. And so I've been very blessed to meet a lot of them, and a lot of them that I haven't met are other members of our team have met, and that's probably our favorite thing that we do.
I love that. You actually brought up a really interesting point, which I actually consider, like, I am very close with my grandma, and my kids do a lot of stuff with her as their great grandma. So maybe there's something to be said about that, because she's one of those people that's done like Disneyland and Disney World with us like a bunch of times in her 80s trekking around. So I want to take all my aging advice from her and other people who are still thriving in this time period. So,
Tough. Disney is tough,
um,
and it's tough on somebody our age. And so being able to go around, and especially if she was hauling around your kids and stuff like that, I mean, that bodes very well. People who are active like that, so God bless her. Hopefully that continues.
yeah. Oh, I can only hope so. She's slaying it at 83, so I'm hoping
Awesome.
that's my dream goal in the future.
Yeah.
So, um, okay. Oh, my dog is thriving down here,
I've
but
heard. Yeah.
um. You can just see him just kind of like walk back and forth behind my chair. This is what we
Uh,
get for not having blurred backgrounds on here.
right.
All right. Personal question for both of you guys, does not have to be related to your company, but what is some of the research or the technological advancements that's exciting to you in the field of longevity right now? Or I guess you could technically say AI if you really want to, but what's what's tickling your fancy? What gets you all excited right now?
AI is a huge one. I would say the others would be the preventative technologies, and I'll give two examples. I would say the preemptive MRI, Prenovo is a good example. They are, I think they're expensive for most folks right now, but so were TVs at one point, so were cell phones at one point, and at one point there'll be a way to scale it to where stuff is seen early. And then I'm very excited about things like Iceland, for example, and Iceland has a smaller population, and they have a lot of more familial relation, but they just got some form of genetic testing, I think just for one disease, where they're going to scan their entire population. And those, turning the system away from sick care to preventative is so important. And so when I look at things like Pronovo and I look at things like Iceland is doing, I think it is a sign of things to come. Whereas a lot more people can live a lot more life because there's a focus on catching it early. And I'm very excited about that. And I hope that that goes mainstream as soon as possible.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that as well. Just the shift that's occurring that really needs to in order to really achieve these higher longevity goals. Because it's like we had sort of the old times where we were kind of susceptible maybe to dying early of kind of now preventable causes, and then now we have this era where more people are making it to their older years, but they're very sickly and not ideal in those years more often than not. And so now going into that next stage of majority of people living into old age and being healthy, and then seeing what actually comes from there. But yeah, definitely the kind of reawakening of kind of natural medicine and holistic wellness is definitely the most exciting thing for me in longevity, because when you go to these events and you look into these subject matters, people are beginning to talk about these things and talk about scientifically validated methods. Not that it's just some weird I'm saying, I don't want to say voodoo in an offensive way, but like witch doctory kind of stuff. It's not pseudoscience or anything, but that we're actually rediscovering the true potential of herbs and of just the idea of holistic wellness, like focusing on the whole entire system, including mental health, rather than only just where your symptoms and where it hurts and all that kind of thing. And being able to explore new things, like how in Miami we actually were at a psychedelics and longevity conference. The fact that we're actually there at this point in time, like exploring, our psychedelics, which are known back, as just a hippie drugs or whatever. Is this something that can actually, extend health span? So I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, this isn't quite related to longevity, but along with the preventative medicine, I'm really interested to see, to be quite honest, where these weight loss drugs will be going to in the future, and how that impacts everyone's health span moving forward. Obviously, we don't know the side effects. People haven't been taking them for long enough, but being able to, obesity is one of the highest, most common diseases, especially in the US. Probably not everywhere else in the world, but in the US, yeah. So I'll be interested to see if things like this can help prevent obesity and stuff moving forward, and then also create better generational patterns where this is not as common moving forward. I think that we've kind of gone through this cycle of having access to fast food and unhealthy things, and now everyone's kind of swinging that pendulum back, like both of you mentioned, of like, okay, how do we get back to like not gorging and like preventing all of this traumatic things from impacting us for a longer period of time. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see drug discovery in the future and how it helps us.
That is an interesting point. Yeah, it's not exactly longevity related, but just like people might have always said, well, obesity is not a disease. You just like now people say aging is not a disease. Well, when you can fix it with a medicine, that kind of means that obesity to some extent might have been a disease. So yeah, it is interesting as not just in itself, but also what potential it opens as far as like what can really be treated. I mean, I would have never thought that obesity could be cured like that.
Right?
Mhm.
I know. And like Jasmine mentioned, like even with mental health and the psychedelics, it's like if we can create more of a whole body wellness, I think that everyone's health span is going to increase dramatically, because a lot of times we tend to focus on one particular aspect, whether it's just the physical body and what you're putting into it and what you're doing to it. But that only makes up so much, because again, if you have mental health disorders or things like that, but your body is still working great, it doesn't really fit. All the pieces don't connect the way that they should be, and or don't really want to be living that long if you're feeling the way that you need to. So I think it's going to be really great to have that whole, I'm going to go piece of the pie, pizza, whatever it is, to be able to connect and be taken care of as we move forward.
Absolutely. I agree.
All right. I'm going to skip to our last two questions here. All right, first one. What do you feel like the biggest bottlenecks and or challenges are going to be within your respective fields of longevity or longevity as a whole in the upcoming years?
Jasmine?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think, well, to begin with, in order to kind of get these global initiatives going, there are kind of like regulatory hurdles to cross, and all sorts of kind of socio-political aspects to be able to actually get these data sets standardized, organized, and processed. But organizations like ours, we're hoping kind of accelerates that direction and kind of gets this conversation and this collaboration going, so that we really can have a full data set of all of humanity instead of only certain populations. So I think that's going to be pretty big. Other than that, I mean, yeah, I think the challenges are pretty similar as they are just for regular health outcomes. I think the future is very bright in the technological sense for longevity, but it's more on the social political side. I think to actually push these things forward, like, being able to come to reality that maybe we actually need to stop, building so many McDonald's restaurants in order for a better society or something like that. Like, people may not want to, really engage in those kind of things. And yes, I think coming to this kind of holistic global awareness of what it really means to have a long-lived and thriving society. And it doesn't mean that, we're not enjoying our lives, because it's a big part of it, but it means that, we change the way that we think and act in, compared to the past.
I was going to approach it from a different word than Jasmine used, but mine would generally be the same. The word I was going to use, and maybe this is Western bias in itself, was balkanization, in the sense of having these split communities where there's the European longevity industry, the American longevity industry, the Japanese longevity industry. Obviously, in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, there's a lot of investment now too. I think the key is having stuff that's more than just local, and having organizations, companies, this dialogue, because there really is there's different cultures, etc., but a human body works the same in all parts of the world. There, at least individual bias aside, and it's something that there needs to be a lot of global cooperation, because I have seen examples of how, and really I can only speak for European, South American, and Japanese. Um, there is some cloistering where these markets are all a little bit isolated and not as much dialogue as there should be. And I think it, particularly Trans-Pacific, is going to be a really key area of making sure that people are talking to each other. Japan, in many ways, is both the leading source of information about longevity, and also in some ways the biggest consumers of it, because it's a very aging population, and you don't have as much younger people nowadays in Japan. And so they're going to have to deal with things that in many ways the entire world's going to have to deal with pretty soon. And so keeping that global communication open, I think, is a very important thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that what we see here is a lot of very segmented populations, like both of you mentioned, where having being able to have access to this worldwide, I think, is going to take a little bit longer than I think we want it to. I think my ad was going to be, I feel like um, longevity needs to become a little bit more mainstream. Kind of, Jasmine kind of mentioned, like, oh, it's kind of like voodoo-ish. And not that it is, because if you're in the longevity field, I think you know that a lot of it is science-based, or most of it is science-based, but at the end of the day, we don't actually know. I like to put it as in a very similar camp as, blockchain and AI and crypto, where we don't really know the outcome of this yet, but only the trajectory that it's going towards. And since Rejuve works in that field, it's like, yes, we want to combine these two that people don't really know a whole ton about, but we want to encourage the general population to learn more about. So I don't know if it's creating, I don't like, less of a more of a buzzword of longevity, or reframing it so that it's not just like, we want to live to be 200 years old, and more of, hey, we want to live healthier. I mean,
Mhm.
we do want to live to be 200 years old, but I don't know. That's my thought on that, is like, how do we get to that point where more people understand what it is and how it works, and things like that.
So I'll take it first. I think that the longevity is a newer industry, but it's also one of the oldest industries. Remember, I mean, I'm here in Florida, Ponce de Leon, the fountain of youth. I mean, that was they, just like for gold and everything else, that Europe was sending ships over here to find longevity products. Is what it really was, the fountain of youth. And so this is a very old industry, and it's also something that I think that it's very helpful sometimes for folks to think of it not in terms of themselves. How long do you want to live? How long do you want your mother to live? People might get two different answers to that question, or maybe to reference what David Sinclair and others are doing. How long do you want your dog to live or cat to live? And I think when people talk about all those things, they look at the people around them. It's a lot more of a universal. People can dislike themselves or not care how much they live. When people look at the people around them, I think you're going to see something that everybody needs and everybody wants, and everybody wants people around them to be healthy. So I think that it's not going to be as tough as we think. There is an element where there's been that snake oil in the past, and that I think that's largely past it now. I think that this has gone mainstream. I mean, I read about the longevity industry in the Wall Street Journal nowadays. It's not just industry magazines nowadays, and so I think that problem will solve itself as more therapies become more widely known and as it gets shown that people can actually take action to expand their health span. Then it's not going to be a problem whatsoever.
Yeah, I also think like it is kind of having its own natural revival, even though people aren't like necessarily using the word longevity. We're seeing an increase in people wanting to, know more about what they're eating and tracking their health and, wearing, smartwatches and, getting into fitness and all that kind of thing. Like we're just seeing sort of this I feel like everyone's just on that, like, doing yoga and little mini exercise classes and all this kind of thing. It's like eventually the worlds will collide, and, using apps like the one that we're developing as well, as people are kind of, tracking their personal health metrics, just for their everyday life. It's an introduction into this whole idea of longevity and actually making it a conscious goal to get into your older years healthier, which is probably already their goal if they're into fitness and everything like that. But, making it more deliberate in the sense of now you actually understand, what a telomere is and, what are all these like actual mechanisms that are happening, and understanding, how to actually craft a personalized wellness plan that's actually, scientifically accurate as well as feels intuitively good as well.
Agreed. I'm excited to see how the next couple of years really shapes this as we move forward, because like you said, it's becoming so popular right now. Like, who doesn't have some sort of tracker of any kind on them at the moment, right? It's like, doesn't matter if you're an Apple or an Android user, you got something that's telling you how you're living your life, how you can reduce your stress, what you should be how much you should be standing, things like that. So it's only going to get better as we continue.
If I could say one thing real quick, I just want everybody to remember who might watch this that the people who are super centenarians now started their families during the Great Depression, during World War II, and they too had questions about the world, and the world seemed to be getting really cruddy, and they had a lot of stress and really terrible lives in many places, and they seem pretty happy today, and they've lived a long time, and so I would caution everybody to avoid being too brought down by world events. If there's one common thing that I hear from super centenarians, like, hey, do you remember when women got the right to vote? Wasn't paying attention. That's a very common answer because they were just focused on them and themselves and their lives. And so, if anybody doesn't want to live long because of the state of the world, there's not a single super centenarian who ever had that thought. So drop it. I think people need to focus on themselves and their lives, and that's some advice that I've taken from them.
That's awesome.
Ben, that was so insightful.
Well, thank
I
you.
love it. I think that, I agree with you. There's so much fear and uncertainty with inflation and world events and things like that, that's a great attitude that we can learn from super
I
centenarians,
think so.
because not all of us millennials, Gen Zs and such feel the same way as they do about all of everything that's happening. So, all right, my last and final question for you guys is, how can people get involved with either of your projects if they watch this and they go, holy cow, this is exactly what I want to learn more about?
Um, yeah, so from our side, the best place to start is just going to Rejuve.AI, and you can kind of learn more about what we actually do. We do have a mobile app in a beta phase right now that you can go ahead and test out if you'd like to follow our progress as we get closer to the release date. And yeah, also just getting involved in our communities as well on Telegram and Discord. We always like to discuss health, wellness, crypto, and just finding ways to collaborate and really build out this ecosystem and Web3 based longevity economy.
And for us, it would be going to LongeviQuest.com. I'll say that if you know somebody, if it's your grandmother, great grandmother, your great grandfather that you think is a super centenarian, click submit a claim. But if you're just interested, you go ahead and research these people. Look at our directory, our atlas. Look at our news. We do have some folks who are more experts on the health side who are going and analyzing some of these things based on the data we have so far. And so, by all means, take a look. Go to our YouTube channel, LongeviQuest, because it really, a picture is 1,000 words and a video is many more than that. And seeing these folks and seeing them as happy as they are and seeing them sing, I mean, really will brighten your day as well. So by all means, you go there, and I'm excited personally to follow what Rejuve is doing as well, because there's a lot of very exciting stuff that they're up to. So I'll be checking into Rejuve.AI myself.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thanks for joining me today, you guys. I don't have a name for this what this segment is called yet, but I appreciate hearing everyone's insights into how you feel the field of longevity is going. So until next time.
Thank you both very much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Enjoyed
you.
it. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.